All right, so you're ready to really dig into this whole election 2024 thing. You don't want
Mhm.
just the headlines, right? You want to get into the nitty-gritty, the stuff that's really driving this race. Well, you've come to the right place. We've got a whole deep dive lined up for you, packed with maps, polls, even some of those, well, let's just say interesting moments from the campaign trail.
Yeah, we're talking those head scratcher moments. Our goal here is to give you the insights you need to really wrap your head around this election. Consider us your guides to the 2024 election maze.
And trust me, a guide is exactly what we need right now. It's Harris versus Trump, round two. The polls are so close, it's making everyone nervous. And with Election Day right around the corner, well, you can feel the tension in the air.
Absolutely. Those margins are razor thin, that's for sure. It's October 21st today, so we are officially in the home stretch. Buckle up, because things are about to get even wilder.
Speaking of wild, let's look at those swing states, shall we? They're always a roller coaster. 270 to Win has this awesome interactive map, the one that's based on all the latest polls. It's painting a pretty interesting picture. What are your first impressions?
Well, it really hits home how crucial those swing states are, especially in a race this tight. It's still too early to call it for anyone, but Michigan is looking particularly intriguing, wouldn't you say? Harris has a lead there, and one poll I saw even put her 8 points ahead.
Michigan always seems to keep us on the edge of our seats. But we can't forget, we're looking at a whole bunch of different polls here. And they're not all telling the same story. It's like trying to put together one of those jigsaw puzzles where the pieces keep changing shape right in front of you.
Exactly. One minute it looks like Harris is pulling ahead, the next it's Trump, and then there are those polls that show them totally neck and neck. It's enough to make even the most experienced political analysts throw their hands up.
I was reading this article in Forbes the other day, and they called this one of the tightest races in modern history. And even Nate Silver's Silver Bulletin, the one everyone watches, is only predicting a 1.7-point win for Harris. It really shows you just how unpredictable this election is.
Absolutely. Every single vote could make the difference at this point. And speaking of Michigan, there's another poll out, this one by the Bullfinch Group, and they have Harris up by 5 points.
5 points, wow. Are we thinking Michigan could be the key here? The state that tips the scales one way or the other?
It's definitely a possibility. But, and this is important, we have to remember that polls are just a snapshot, a glimpse of where things stand at a particular moment. Things change fast, especially in these last few weeks before the election.
So we've got these swing states in play, an electoral map that looks like a patchwork quilt, and polls that are all over the place. What other trends should we be keeping an eye on as we try to make sense of this electoral maze?
Well, there's one thing that's been catching the attention of some political watchers: Harris's lead among Latino voters. It's smaller than what we've seen with previous Democratic candidates. NBC News has been reporting on this. It's not a huge shift, but definitely something worth noting as we move forward.
That's interesting. I hadn't picked up on that. It seems like even small changes in how different groups are voting could have a big impact, especially in such a close race. Now, I know we need to cover the serious stuff, but we can't talk about an election without at least mentioning some of the more colorful happenings on the campaign trail, can we?
Yeah, you gotta have a little fun with it, right? It's not all serious business.
Keeps things interesting, that's for sure. And this election, well, let's just say there's been no shortage of those that really just happen moments. Like, remember Trump's little McDonald's adventure?
Ah, yes, the man does love his fast food. This time, he decided to throw on an apron and try his hand at being a fry cook at a McDonald's over in Pennsylvania.
I saw the pictures. It was quite a sight. But I hear he wasn't just flipping burgers. He also used the opportunity to work in some of his thoughts on the election, specifically, about how much he trusts it.
It's true. It seems like questioning the integrity of the election process has become a bit of a recurring theme in his speeches and rallies.
Only Trump could turn a fast food stop into a platform for election commentary. But okay, this next one, this might be even more, shall we say, unique. The whole Arnold Palmer story. I have to admit, even I'm still scratching my head over that one.
It was certainly a memorable moment, I'll give him that.
Sure.
So Trump's at a rally, right? Pennsylvania, I think it was. And he goes off on this tangent and completely out of left field about the golfer, Arnold Palmer. And, well, let's just say it involved showers, and the internet had a field day with it.
Yeah, I bet they did. I'm still not sure what the point of that whole story was. But I guess that's part of what makes covering Trump so interesting. You never know what he's going to say or do next.
Unpredictable, definitely. Maybe even a little calculated, who knows. But there's no denying that His style, whatever you want to call it, seems to resonate with a certain part of the electorate.
Absolutely. And speaking of interesting players in this election, we can't forget about Elon Musk. Now, this is where things get really wild. Remember how he bought Twitter a while back and everyone thought that was crazy?
Right, and now he's back in the political ring, but this time he's not just tweeting from the sidelines. He's gone ahead and created his own political action committee, a PAC. And of course, he's not doing it the way everyone else does.
Oh, no, not Elon. His packy is all about these million-dollar giveaways, supposedly to encourage people to vote. Is that even allowed?
It's a good question. A million-dollar question, you might say. Even Governor Shapiro over in Pennsylvania thinks it's a little fishy. He's actually calling for an investigation into whether it's legal or not. Looks like Musk might be pushing the limits of campaign finance laws with this one.
Definitely something to keep an eye on, that's for sure. It's easy to get caught up in all the big national stuff, but we can't forget that there's a lot more going on in this election than just the presidential race.
You're absolutely right. Sometimes it's those smaller, under-the-radar events that can have a surprisingly big impact on the outcome. Like, for example, did you hear about that special election they had in Alabama for a state house seat?
I didn't catch that now.
It wasn't a huge news story or anything, but it could give us some clues about how people are feeling and what they're thinking at a more local level, and that can be really telling.
Good point. So, where did this leave us? We've got these swing states everyone's watching, polls that seem to change every day, some pretty memorable moments on the campaign trail, and of course, Elon Musk shaking things up as always. As we head into these last few weeks before Election Day, how do we make sense of it all? How do we connect the dots and figure out what's really going on? It's a lot to process, that's for sure. Kind of like, I don't know, trying to predict the weather in the middle of a tornado.
It's definitely complex, there's no doubt about that. But I think if we step back, look at the big picture, we can start to see some key takeaways.
Okay, so what are the most important things our listeners should be focusing on as we get closer to Election Day?
Well, first and foremost, this election, it's about as fluid as it gets. I mean, we've talked about it, right? Polls are all over the place. Those swing states are anyone's game. And even the smallest shift in how people are feeling could completely change the outcome. It really shows you how dynamic our democracy is.
It's like watching a political thriller, but it's actually happening right in front of us.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to stay informed and not just rely on one source. You've got great resources out there like that 270 to win map, which really lets you visualize how things stand. Then you've got those poll aggregators like 538 and Real Clear Politics. They take all those different polls, crunch the numbers, and give you an average, which is usually a lot more helpful than just looking at one poll in isolation.
And we can't forget about those deeper dives, the analyses that go beyond just the headlines. Like that NBC News piece we mentioned about Harris's lead among Latino voters. Really makes you think about the nuances of what's going on.
Absolutely. It's not enough to know what the polls say. You have to dig a little deeper and understand why they say it. And speaking of different perspectives, let's not forget about those down-ballot races. Everyone gets so caught up in the presidential election, but those local and state elections, they have a huge impact on our day-to-day lives, the things that matter most in our communities.
So true. It's not just about who sits in the Oval Office. It's about shaping the future at every level. So before we wrap things up, I know you always like to leave our listeners with something to think about, a little food for thought, as we navigate the rest of this election season. What is it for today?
Well, we spent a lot of time today talking about the national picture, but at the end of the day, elections are often won and lost at the local level. So my question to everyone listening is this: what does the political landscape look like in your state? Take some time, look into those local races, the candidates, and see how it all connects to the bigger national conversation. I think you might be surprised by what you find.
I love that. Makes you realize that we all have the power to really understand this election if we just take the time to look a little closer.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, right? The more informed we are, the better equipped we are to have meaningful conversations, to speak up about the things we care about, and to really participate in our democracy.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh.
So there you have it, your crash course in election 2024, complete with swing states, polls that could give you whiplash, some pretty interesting moments from the campaign trail, and of course a little dash of Elon Musk just to spice things up. Remember, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, get out there and vote.